Hey guys, welcome back to Supernatural Saturday, Halloween edition, obviously. So for today's very first Halloween edition of Supernatural Saturday, I did kind of bounce back and forth between two different ideas that I had. The first is the one that we're going to be going with. It just felt a little bit more exciting. But the other idea I had was my own personal paranormal experiences. Let me know if you still want me to make a video on that. I just felt like it was a little bit more boring. I wanted to kind of end October on a big bang, so I went with the more exciting story, but it's still kind of near and dear to my heart. So when my husband and I first began dating, October 27th of 2012, the very first thing we did was we went with his dad and his two brothers to this haunted house called Frightmare Manor in Talbot, Tennessee. And it's this little tiny rinky-dink town. I didn't even know it actually existed. I thought that Jefferson City and Morristown connected, and I had no idea that this little town existed, and that's how just tiny it is. And it was a blast, to be honest. I had so much fun. It was very high quality considering the location it was in, and it was just a lot of fun. And the whole time they keep telling us about this serial killer from the early 1900s that murdered his family in the house and killed himself, dumped some bodies in the backyard. And you know, the whole time you're in a haunted house, you're thinking, this is obviously fabricated for the story, like it's not real. Well, it turns out this one might be real. There was a lot of controversy surrounding if this story is true or not. When the haunted house first became a thing, I could find a couple of articles here and there saying it's not true, we can't find any paperwork saying it's true, there's nothing suggesting that this actually happened. But as time has gone on and this haunted house has become one of the highest rated haunted houses on all of the East Coast in the United States, it's really, I can't find anything saying that this is not true. The only articles I'm able to find are saying that this is 100% true, and there are reasons why people did not believe it in the first place. So I'm gonna put the story out to you guys, and I'll let you decide if you think this was an actual man or a myth. Jeremiah Lexer was a 19th century plantation owner who actually was a pretty big part in establishing Hamblen County as a whole, establishing the entire county, which Talbot is in, so is Morristown. And he lived in this large plantation home with his wife, his son, daughter-in-law, and their 3 grandchildren who were ages 12, 8, and 4 years old. Now, according to records, Jeremiah Lexer was a pretty upstanding member of society. He never did anything wrong, people were not suspicious of him, he was just, overall, just kind of a great dude. But in 1887, missing persons cases started rolling in for this little itty-bitty town, and the sheriff and police force at the time explained it away, saying people were wandering into the woods and either getting lost or getting taken by wildlife. And at the time, Talbot, Morristown, this entire area was just very mountainous, very much a big wooded area, so it was fairly dangerous. But to have this many missing persons cases popping up, it did kind of set off an alarm. People were very confused. On July 5th of 1902, Sheriff J.F. Hayes was called to the Lexer plantation and discovered a truly gruesome scene. He said to the Morristown Gazette, which was the newspaper at the time, quote, "Seeing so much gruesome torture and murder to innocent life was truly sickening. I vomited and had to go outside to gain my composure." They had been called there because people had noticed Jeremiah Lexer had unfortunately committed suicide by jumping out of a second-story window, and people did not know what horrors truly waited them inside that house. In the middle of the night, Jeremiah Lexer had taken a freshly sharpened axe and hacked all of his family members to death, dismembered them, scattered their remains throughout the house, and what may be even more disturbing were the unintelligible words and just smears that he had put all over the walls inside his home in his own family's blood. At about 3:25 in the morning, Jeremiah Lexer walked up the wooden stairs in the house, placed his bloody axe on the mantle, and leapt from the second-story building head first. Now, while inside the house was a horrific sight, the police were even in for more of a shock. When they went to explore the rest of the property and make sure that nothing else had really gone on, they discovered a mass grave behind this man's house, behind his barn, and there were tons of rotting bodies that looked like they had been tortured and mutilated. It seems Jeremiah Lexer was experimenting on these people that had supposedly gone missing from the town. The official body count that's attributed to Jeremiah Lexer is 26, but there were also 31 other bodies that were discovered on his property, but they did not directly tie these to Lexer, although most likely I couldn't see how it could be anybody else. We now know that Lexer actually suffered from extreme schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and unfortunately at that time in history there were no treatments. The mental illnesses were relatively unheard of and people had no idea how to deal with it. So he went completely unchecked, unmedicated, and that is what led up to this horrific murder spree. Now, at the time, this little Hamblen County was really struggling financially, economically. It just wasn't doing well because people weren't moving out to it. It was in a very secluded area and it was hard to convince people to move out there. Now that there was a documented serial killer who had been in the location and killing people, the odds of people moving to this little rinky-dink town was pretty much unheard of. They knew that if this got out, if word got out, their little Hamblen County was going to be completely gone. It was not going to survive. So in order to protect the town, the government officials ordered that all of the records of this murder spree were destroyed, covered up, sealed. The newspapers and all the media at the time were ordered to not report on it. There's very little record that this ever happened, and that is how they kind of explain away why people didn't know about it. Even the residents of Morristown and Newmarket and Jefferson City, they did not know about these murders. Even my husband, who grew up in Morristown, literally born in Morristown and never left the area, had no idea about these murders. And his house ended up being changed into a couple of different restaurants, one being called The Attic, and eventually it changed into a seafood restaurant called Dandridge Seafood, which also doesn't make sense. Random side note, it's not even near Dandridge. Like, it's kind of close to Dandridge, but why'd they call it Dandridge Seafood? I don't know. But that's besides the point. My husband and his family apparently ate there regularly, and it really kind of creeps him out now knowing that this possible backstory of it being a house that somebody murdered his whole family in and tortured random innocent lives. In 1987, Tennessee passed a court order called the Tennessee Open Records Act, and it forced the hand of Hamblen County to release these records. But just because they were released does not mean that they were just given out to the public and everyone got to find out about this horrific thing that happened. It was only for those who really went searching for it. Like, yes, they were open. If you requested for these records, they would be given to you. But people weren't asking about a serial killer in this area. People had no idea. So much time had passed since these murders in 1902 that people just didn't know. That was until a man bought this location and started digging into the history of this plantation home, and he discovered the story of Jeremiah Lexer and his family, and he may be one of the most horrific serial killers of his time. Now, obviously, to me, it seems like it could still be fabricated. Obviously, for people to have completely forgotten that this happened, I get that there was a cover-up, supposedly, and I just find it a little suspicious that someone comes in, buys the location, and turns it into a haunted house, and then somehow discovers that it had this actual thing happen. Seems a little sketch, but we'll let it pass. Like I said earlier, it was 2 different restaurant locations, and the employees at the time were claiming that this place was haunted, just the typical hauntings. I wasn't able to recover any actual stories from these employees. I only could find things that said, oh yes, it was haunted, things would move, they would hear footsteps, they would hear people walking around in the home, even though nobody was technically in there. But I couldn't find any actual first-hand stories of haunted activity in this home, so I'll leave it up to you if you think that it is actually haunted. That being said, Frightmare Manor is currently open. If y'all are in the area, you should definitely go check it out. It's so much fun, and it's just a really great experience. It's a very high quality haunted house, especially considering its location. I haven't been since 2012, and I know that they have done a lot of revamping, a lot of new things have come there since then. It seems like a lot of fun. There's 3 separate locations that you get to go to. One, you get to tour Jeremiah Lexer's actual house, and you enter through the 2nd-story window that he took his final swan dive through. Another is the barn where he supposedly tortured his victims, and I've heard that that place is truly terrifying when you do the walkthrough of that. And also one called the Backwoods, which is just the big backwooded area, and that's where he dumped the bodies. So it is a lot of fun. There's also a money back challenge if you're brave enough, but you do have to eat some truly disgusting things, I have heard, and you have to take a jump from a 2-story platform, which replicates the jump that Jeremiah Lexer took on his way out of this life. So I'll go ahead and link the website Frightmare Manor down in the description. If you guys are curious, go ahead and check it out. Go ahead and go. There is still time before Halloween, and tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think that this is an actual serial killer? Do you think that these killings actually happened and Jeremiah Lexer actually went on a crazy final rampage while succumbing to his mental illnesses? Or do you think it's all a myth? I'll see y'all next week for another Supernatural Saturday. Have a great weekend.